While the Russians sacrifice almost obscene amounts of men and material for minor gains around Avdiivka, the Ukrainians have established the next foothold on the left bank of the Dnipro. They seem to even have partially liberated the first town. We'll talk about this and other events along the front line and the background of the war in Ukraine in this situation report. Hello and welcome. We start off with the northern part of the eastern front line, basically here north of the Seversky Donetsk. The Russians are continuing to attack more or less along the whole front line. I could now start mentioning a couple of names just to show you how bad I pronounce them, but basically I cannot confirm, I cannot observe any change on the front line itself. So while fighting is continuing there, while the Russians keep attacking at various parts of the front line, I do not see any change that I can confirm. South of the Seversky Donetsk, we have no change again that I can freshly confirm. The Ukrainians are confirmed to have crossed the railroad bridge north of Klishivka, and the Russians do counterattacks, but all of this was done, I already confirmed this in yesterday's situational picture, so from this point of view I don't see anything that would have changed since yesterday. So let's directly switch to Avdiivka, and there the fighting is highly intense. And the fighting is continuing. The Russians are advancing in the north. We have some geolocalization here where they are close to Stepove, close to the road here. They have once again moved into this. This is more or less in this area here where they have been observed. The situation on the waste heap is unclear. The Russians are claiming they have taken it. I do not see any confirmation whatsoever. Neither do I have Ukrainians confirming that it's held by the Russians, nor do I see visual evidence of the Russians being on the waste heap. We talked in the past episodes about the importance of it, as it gives a massive overview over the area, and thus whoever holds it will have a better chance of advancing or defending in the overall area. I found one Ukrainian source or one Ukrainian commenter, I would probably say, of whom I cannot say much about its past credibility, but he claimed the Russians have been there again, like they have been on the 10th of October, basically admitting or confirming that the Russians had stormed the waste heap in the past. But he claims that everyone was killed, every Russian soldier was killed in the process, so it's a little difficult to confirm it as of now. If we would take his admission, then we would have the confirmation that the Russians have entered the hill or have climbed the hill, but we don't really know what's going on, as I usually take the defending side's defeats as serious, but not their claims of success, which makes it a little complicated, but at least provides me with a chance to do less Fox reporting, that I have less mistakes when it comes to territorial claims. So as of now, the situation on the waste heap is unclear. I think it's a fair possibility that the Russians have taken it, but I definitely cannot confirm it as of now. We'll have to observe it in the future and in future episodes. Also, fighting has continued in the south. I cannot record any fresh advance by the Russians, and further south, Marinka and Novomikhailivka, the attacks by the Russians failed. At Vuhledar, the Ukrainians attacked in vain, didn't change anything. And on the Oblast border, we seem to have a little bigger Ukrainian attack, a few bigger Ukrainian attacks, so no longer 3 to 5 men at Staromayorske and Uroshaine. No success though, and the Russians basically attacked along the whole front. I have reports from Priutne in the direction of Rivnopil, Staromayorske, Novodonetsk, Novomayorske, so more or less along the whole front Russian attacks happened, but I do not see any successes here either. The Vostok Battalion, which is a unit from the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, is also saying it's more or less just skirmishes, because neither side has because they don't have the reserves to do serious attacks, and which, as their reserves have been moved to other parts of the front line. The Russian military blogger Riba was writing it's more or less parity here, as no side has superiority. So while the Russians might have attacked more lately, it does not seem likely that they are going to have any significant success there anytime soon. Both sides seem to put this more or less into the backwater, this area. No side seems to concentrate on it right now. At Orikhiv, we have some new information as well. We have Wargonzo confirming that the Ukrainians had some successes towards Novofedorivka. This is, where is it? Yeah, here, advanced west of Novofedorivka. The village itself is 6 kilometers away. That's a Russian military blogger. Again, we're taking his admission of defeat for more or less to be reliable. So in this regard, they would have advanced in this direction. Whether or not 6 kilometer, what the distance is 6 kilometer is a different story though, because from which point does he count? And as you can see here, this wouldn't even be 6 kilometer where we have the last confirmed front line on this map at least. So it's somewhat unclear, but we do know, or we can at least assume to know, that the Ukrainians have been somewhat successful in this direction. He also mentions that it's troublesome because the Ukrainians try to get the high ground to put better pressure on Novofedorivka and Verbove. Again, no huge changes in the area except minor Ukrainian successes. We are going to observe it in the future. It's a little more interesting what's happening along the Dnipro. The Ukrainians are continuing to pressure the Russians. We have confirmation that they are even have advanced over the town of Krimki, which you can see here. Before I had confirmation when I did the research that they had reached the town but were pushed back to the outskirts. That was one Russian confirming it. Now we have the Russian military blogger Riba showing us that they have advanced over the line of Krimki itself, meaning that they need to, that by definition, they have to control a significant part of the town if they are fighting to its southeast already. This is here. The confirmation that we have on Riba, and according to Russian military bloggers, the Russians have advanced in the past. The Ukrainians had advanced towards the connection road, but as we've seen, according to Riba, they are more or less already in this area and have established a bridgehead. We also have a geolocalization here, which shows us that they have been inside of Krimki, and here you can see the overall situation. It's more or less, I guess, dachas along the river. Probably in peacetime a beautiful place to live, which leads to a band of houses more or less following the river. And here at least they have established themselves in the center, which then will give them additional protection against shelling. They still don't have any confirmation of heavy Ukrainian weaponry on this side of the Dnipro, which will then obviously be of much bigger importance. But as of now, we can confirm that the Ukrainians are over the river here. And as you can see here, they are also confirmed by Riba that they are close to Pishchanivka, which is down here. So here we also have the Ukrainians over the river at 2 points now, at least at 2 points. They are over the river and have established smaller bridgeheads. Overall, if we come to the overall evaluation of the current situation. First, we start with the Russians saying that the Ukrainians fired 10 to 15 rockets or missiles, I guess missiles in the rear areas, both in Kherson and on the Crimean Peninsula. So in this area, they fired 10 to 15 missiles. They claim the Russians shot down 5 over Kherson and another one here over the Black Sea, but I do not find any confirmation of hits, any visual evidence of something destroyed. So we don't really know much what that was supposed to be. If that was supposed to be attacks with ATACMS, maybe on airfields, if it was supposed to be S-200 striking, I don't know, in the direction of Sevastopol or anything like this. As said, as of now, we just have the Russian claims that they shot down a couple. But let's go back to Avdiivka. In the overall situation, the loss ratios here become absurdly high. The Ukrainian General Staff said in its fresh report 50 main battle tanks were lost and over 100 IFVs and APCs, so armored fighting vehicles. Other Ukrainian sources say over 200 in total. This is now, we are talking about the equipment for probably closing in on 3 battalion tactical groups that are wiped out. Video evidence shows fields of Russian corpses lying around. The Russians have suffered insane losses at Avdiivka, but as of now they keep pushing, and this obviously leads to a lot of scrutiny from the Russian side. Now, while I cannot confirm the total numbers yet that the Ukrainian General Staff or Ukrainian sources claim, visual evidence that is widely available shows heavy Russian losses, wrecks lying around everywhere, heavy losses, videos showing them being blown up with artillery, with mines, with anti-tank missiles. So the Russians are definitely suffering tremendous losses in their current offensives towards Avdiivka. And as you've seen, the successes so far are visible. They aren't insignificant, as I said yesterday, because especially advances here in the south, we have strong Ukrainian fortifications that held out for 1.5 years of full-scale war, and before that it was where the front line stabilized. So those are strong fortifications, and a couple of them have fallen, but overall the cost for these small territorial gains have been tremendous. There is a Russian mill blogger complaining about the current situation. Military informant. I mentioned him a couple of times in the past, and he's complaining. You can pause the video and read it for yourself, but basically, to summarize it, the Russian artillery is very bad at counter-battery fire. It's usually done with Lancet drones, but there are no Lancet drones there. So the Russians do a counteroffensive and leave out or forget about their most efficient tool for counter-battery fire. And you need to understand this is a Russian military blogger. So it's not some Ukrainian propaganda claiming the Russians are idiots. It's a Russian military blogger that is clearly on the Russian side, that does Russian pro-military reporting, however you want to call it. He's complaining that the Russian side made fundamental mistakes. He's also complaining that despite the offensive being planned for a full month, there's still no reserves in artillery shells. So apparently they didn't get extra shells allotted despite planning such usage of men and material. Also, if I understand it correctly, the end here, he says the Russians used their artillery observers as infantry. If this is true and not a misunderstanding from my side, it would be utterly insane. They would use the guys trained to guide artillery, to use them in infantry assaults and losing them, and thus not having the ability to guide their infantry properly anymore. As said, there's a possibility of me misunderstanding something. This is translated from Russian to English for you here. My first language isn't English, so there might be minor deficiencies in my understanding. There might be some slang involved in the Russian language that Google Translate doesn't understand, so there is still a possibility of a mistake from my side. But if I haven't understood it, if I haven't misunderstood it, then we're talking about the Russians wasting their artillery observers as cannon fodder, which would be utterly insane. The troop generation for Russia is the next topic. It's getting more problematic inside of Russia, obviously, because a general mobilization is avoided. And at the same time, hundreds of thousands have fled the country. Tatarstan is now introducing the process of changing the laws about child labor or labor of minors. In the future, people not yet of 18 years are supposed to be allowed to work at dangerous jobs. Apparently that was so far forbidden, and they are meant to be used in the defense industry. The laws are to be changed, and we're not talking about 12-year-olds here, so we need to have some fairness. The laws are meant to be 16 to 18 years old, that they can be used in jobs that are supposedly dangerous. There was also a report about the Redut PMC. That's the one that's connected with the Russian Ministry of Defense, and a Russian military blogger who talked to them, who visited them, says they are mostly consistent of former veterans from the Afghanistan war. So we are talking about men who were soldiers in 1989, 34 years ago. So obviously they must be over 50 by now to even be used in that. But the interesting part also is he claimed there are no real command structures, no rigid command structures, and they more or less concentrate on defending. So according to that, they wouldn't be used in offensive operations, and more or less is a weird militia that's only supposed to hold its position. The interesting part, which is kind of contradicting though, is that they're supposed to have their own Storm Z units. Those are the convict recruits that Russia is recruiting in the prisons, but with the promise of a full pardon after 6 months of fighting. And now it became known that the Russian Ministry of Defense might issue the pardon after 6 months, but is forcing them to sign another contract, a contract for military service afterwards. So if they thought they might be done with it after 6 months, they won't be. They will be staying in uniform until this conflict is solved in one or the other way, or they found their way out of the military through missing limbs or missing life. We also have a report from RUSI. Dr. Jack Watling said the attrition of the Russians is so strong that they are getting problems creating sufficiently trained soldiers. So basically, it's not necessarily that they don't get enough soldiers, but they lose them so fast that they don't have the time to properly train them to send them back to the front line. That's one of their huge problems they're facing right now. And while Russia had, for the first time, inferiority in artillery fire in the south, we talked about it here on this channel in the past, the Ukraine also will have trouble to keep their own fire superiority up, as the storage they built up for the offensive is getting empty, and the production in the west might be increasing, but it's nowhere close to having reached levels which would allow the Ukraine basically to keep blasting away. Russia, on the other side, has significantly increased its own production and is now getting aid from Iran and North Korea. To that, in connection with this, is that now after Shoigu, also the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, has visited North Korea and met with his colleague there, the Foreign Minister of North Korea, at the same time showing the improvement of the bilateral relationship and obviously the Russian attempts to get as much artillery shells as possible. This could be an issue for Ukraine because North Korea is focused on its artillery, or has for the past decades, focused its whole deterrence. I somehow always forget that word. North Korea has focused the majority of its deterrence on artillery. The amount of shells they are able to shell Seoul with, the civilian casualties they are able to claim there in case of war, were meant to deter South Korea. Over 10,000 artillery pieces are thought to be in North Korean position, and for decades of use of preparation and arms industry producing, North Korea should have tens of millions of artillery shells, so it can probably hand over significant amounts to the Russians. Russia will in turn have to aid the North Koreans probably with missile technology, with fighter jets, things like this, but the aid it'll receive from North Korea will be significant. By the way, I sometimes struggle with missile and rocket because in German it's the same word. For guided and unguided, we simply use Rakete. That's why I sometimes struggle with it. It's the other way around with commander, by the way. The tank commander has another word than the battalion commander. So it's kind of difficult sometimes. Also, now the report says Russia initially produced 40 long-range missiles. Now they are at over 100 a month. So this will be a problematic winter for Ukraine once Russia fully takes over its shelling of the infrastructure inside of Ukraine again. And in addition, the Shahids are increasing in numbers as well. They are not just buying them from Iran, but they are setting up production facilities. We initially mentioned Tatarstan. They are currently building a massive production facility for Shahid drones there. So this will be even more problems for the Ukrainian air defense. And we have from Rostad here by the Jameson Foundation, there was an analysis of Rostad statistics. It's the Russian Statistics Bureau basically that is dividing the cause of death in two categories. One is sickness and one is external reasons. And in the category of external reasons, in the age range of 18 to 29, military is now the highest likelihood overall in the official data, and there will likely still be some falsifying of the data. In the official data, 40% of all external reasons are now dying inside of the military in the age range of 18 to 29, but it's even coming worse. In Buryatia, Northern Ossetia, Dagestan, Mordovia, and Mariel, as well, all minority regions where the Russian ethnicity doesn't have the majority, as well as in Rostov and Orenburg, where the Russian ethnicity is majority, but very, very poor areas inside of Russia. The reason for external deaths is at 70% inside of the military. So again, we see that Russia is focusing its military efforts and its losses on its minorities and on the poorer parts that will less likely cause problems, cause uprisings, etc. And finally, there is a proposed law by the Duma which would allow to take away the Russian citizenship for a nationalized person if it refused military service. And for months we are already observing evidence that the Russians are pressuring immigrants and freshly nationalized people inside of Russia to join the military. So now they want to increase the pressure in this regard to create additional soldiers. That's it from me for now about the war in Ukraine. If I find the time, I'm going to send you an update about the war in Israel soon, but I can't promise it as of now. If you like this though, I really appreciate the thumbs up. It helps a lot with the algorithm. Leave a comment what do you think about the future of the Ukrainian infrastructure in the coming winter, because there will be a new campaign where Russia tries to take out the oil, gas and electricity supply inside of Ukraine. Do you think Ukraine will be able to keep it up, or what problems do you see coming? Leave a comment, discuss with other viewers to gain new information, and it also can be really interesting and help with the algorithm. If you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. And this channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting this channel. That's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.